I ate every piece of candy I could get my hands on. In particular, in middle school, when I was old enough to walk home from school, I would walk and take a detour and stop at this place called the Country Store. My dad was in the military, and so we were able to buy candy duty-free, meaning tax-free. So I can get a couple pounds of candy really for just a few bucks. I'd eat a pound of that on the way home, put another pound of it and stash it away for later. So, that really poor eating habit, all the refined sugars associated with that, something that really stayed with me through most of my adult life. It got a little bit better. I didn't eat a pound, at every setting, but I certainly continued to eat the sweets. And those things, as you know, over time can contribute to poor gut health. Another big factor for me when I was growing up is I took 9 months of tuberculosis medication. So this is an antibiotic, something that's done when you have an exposure to tuberculosis. I didn't really even have tuberculosis, but it's something that people will do preventatively to avoid you actually contracting tuberculosis. Many of you know that taking antibiotics can have a lot of unintended side effects, such as killing indiscriminately both good and bad bacteria. In particular, long course antibiotics, such as what I took, which is 9 months worth of antibiotics, is never a good thing. Typically, if you're going to be forced to take antibiotics or you want to take it as a last resort, you're really looking for those narrow band, short course antibiotics. And you want to then offset that with, healthful eating habits, probiotics, or other things your doctor can prescribe to hopefully keep your overall balance in check. So that was kind of the second big thing I can think of. But going back even further, I was weaned at a really early age and put on formula. And if you have studied anything about the microbiome, you know that the first 3 years of microbiome development are absolutely critical. And so any changes of diet, such as moving away from the absolute best diet for an infant, which is the mother's breast milk, into something like formula, can spawn a negative change of the microbiome. So those are at least 3 things that come to mind. There may be other factors. Again, it tends to be a bit of a layer cake, and your body's pretty resilient, but after a number of risk factors stack up, unfortunately, they can start to tip over into dysbiosis, which is the leading risk factor for gut health issues. And then you can spawn many other side effects, such as acid reflux. Fast forward into early adulthood, that poor diet, stress, and then my very first appointment with a doctor for what at that point was indigestion became a prescription for proton pump inhibitors. And PPIs, as you know, can compromise digestion. They can lower acidity. It creates additional pathways for pathogenic bacteria to overgrow, and it can deepen your symptoms and deepen your reflux. And this is what absolutely occurred for me. So within a couple of weeks, I could no longer go without the medications. And that just started me down that path of 15 years of acid reflux and GERD. Ultimately, I got to a point where I had silent reflux due to some really poor dietary choices. As I ended my day at work, I would typically grab a handful or 2 of Wintergreen Lifesavers and pop those. And they're great because I can kind of crunch them on the way home. One day, I grabbed a handful of those, put one in my mouth, crunched it, and it hit the bottom of my stomach kind of like a ton of bricks. I felt a little bit of a burn. Then my nose started to run, which is strange. I just thought that maybe I had a cold, and sure enough, within 24 hours it went away, so I just chalked it up to just a 24-hour bug of some sort. But at the same time, something in the back of my head told me it was associated with the candy. So I actually stayed away from the candy for a good 2 weeks. About 2 weeks later, I decided to go for the candy again. Well, this time I got the burn, my nose started running, and it really just never stopped. Between that, the post-nasal drip, and the other silent reflux symptoms, I was in pretty bad shape. So after about 6 months of that, I had had enough. Based on a tip from a family friend, I began to start to research reflux and some of its underlying contributing factors. And so that's what led me to the approach that I use to heal my reflux. It's what got me inspired to share some of my journey via the acidrefluxguy.com. Since starting that site in 2020, I've had hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people have reached out to me. One, expressing thanks for sharing an alternate view versus the traditional view you get from mainstream medication. After about a year of hearing from so many people that had gotten so much similar and poor advice such as I had, I decided to write how I cured my silent reflux and just really codify everything that I did to heal my reflux. And so probably the biggest question that I've gotten ever since releasing that book is, what do I eat? And I resisted for a long time creating a cookbook. I'm still resisting creating a cookbook. And so what I've done instead is I've created the Uncooked Book, which I intend to create as a training course, but also to make available as a book and share with you some of my experiences over the last 15 years. Everything is based on research that I've been able to pull from medical journals, scientific articles, studies, meta-studies, and so it tends to be backed by a lot of objective information. So hopefully you find this helpful. Definitely let me know by leaving a review, leaving a comment, and we'll see you on the other side.